Hey, welcome to today's webinar. I have a quick question to start off with. When was the last time you walked away from feedback truly energized to change? If you're like most people, the answer is maybe never. And that's the problem. So we've been told for decades that feedback is the key to growth. But the reality is that feedback fails way more often than it works. And today I'm going to show you why and what to do instead. If you don't know me yet, my name is Bryan Howard. I'm the founder of Peoplyst, and we solve people problems that get in the way of business success. I've worked with companies from Fortune 50s all the way down to startups, and I've hired and trained with my teams over 200,000 people during my career. So I've seen every version of feedback you can imagine, and I've also seen it fail many, many, many times. It just doesn't create lasting growth. So that's why I built a better way, and that better way is what I'm going to show you today. So I talked about us hearing about feedback in a lot of different ways. So what are the ways that we've heard? Somebody told us continuous feedback is the best way, or frequent feedback is the best way, or how about kind feedback? There's even a book about radical feedback. And of course, I think everybody's heard of the feedback sandwich, which I give you a nice picture of here on the screen, which is a compliment and then some feedback in the middle and then another compliment to soften the blow. But these things just don't work. They fail. And there's got to be a better way, right? And there is. So the problem with feedback is that it's backward looking. And so it's like looking in the rearview mirror. All you do is look behind you, and no one goes forward by looking backwards. So growth only happens when we look forward. So that's the biggest problem with feedback is it's backward looking. It focuses on the things that you used to do. And unfortunately, when you do this to people, they feel judged. So when you criticize people by giving them feedback, they don't usually have great reactions. As a matter of fact, most of the time they shut down, or a defensiveness goes up, or frustration climbs for everybody, you and them. And the feedback's not really helping them at all. As a matter of fact, I've watched countless times, I've watched managers give feedback to employees. And while the manager means well, the employee just says, okay, got it. And what they really heard from the feedback was, I don't want to talk to that manager anymore. They're just going to criticize me. So, what if we were able to tell a different story? The main reason that feedback doesn't work, there's actually four main reasons why feedback doesn't work. And the first one is the ego defense. So when you think about times when you have received feedback from somebody, whether they were good at it or not, the immediate reaction that employees or people, even me, get is defensive, right? You think, oh, this person's attacking me. And so you put your defenses up, you put your guards up so that you can make sure that you can protect yourself. And even if the intention's good, you still feel like defending, and that's not going to help you grow. Another one is negativity bias, and this one's rough. There's research that says for uh, every one negative comment you get, it takes five positive comments to get you back on track. So negativity bias just says that you're going to remember the negative comments a lot more than you remember the positive ones. And then attribution error is something that we as human beings do all the time, and managers are certainly guilty of this, which just says that if an employee turns something in on time, then we attribute that characteristic of them being late all the time, or them being lazy, or them being careless, when it might just be a circumstance. So a lot of times when we give feedback to someone saying, "Hey, you were late on that report," what they hear is that you think I'm lazy or you think I'm careless, and that might not be the case. And then finally is just manager blind spots. So a lot of times as managers, and I know I've been guilty of this in my career, is a lot of times as a manager we don't really know everything that's happening around us, and so we may criticize someone for something that wasn't even their fault. So manager blind spots are really difficult when you're trying to give feedback because it doesn't really leave the other person a chance to say, but that's not what happened. And you know as well as I do that at some point in your career, or at least I can speak for myself, I have. I feel like those are excuses when people do that, and so manager blind spots just tell us that we need to get the full picture before we start trying to provide feedback. Or what I'll teach you is a better way for feedback in just a moment. So these are all mental traps, and the mental traps are what makes feedback so bad, and the reason why we need something different. And so the thing that I'm going to tell you about today is different in the way that we provide coaching, which is forward looking. And so let's just look at a couple of differences between what feedback does and what coaching does. And then I'm going to tell you about a model or a framework that you can use to coach effectively every single time. So we'll start with feedback builds fear and coaching builds trust. So feedback says, this is what you did wrong, fix it. And coaching says, we had some things go wrong, and here are some ways to fix it. Let's do it together. That's a very different approach. Feedback creates resistance. I just talked about that, putting the defenses up. Coaching creates ownership. So when we're coaching people, we both own the problem. And when we both own the problem, we both own the solution and the positive outcome as well. And then finally, feedback is about the past and coaching is about the future. So just remember the picture that I showed you of the rear view mirror with feedback on it. That's backward looking, and it's really hard to go forward when you're trying to give feedback. So Marshall Goldsmith, one of my favorite authors and executive coaches in the world, he calls this coaching, calls it feed forward, which is I'm giving you feed forward so you can do something about it. So if feedback fails, what actually creates growth? And that's what we're here to talk about today. Coaching makes employees feel safe enough to be honest and engaged. Coaching also helps conversations go from one-way critiques where you're giving the feedback to two-way growth moments where it's a conversation or a collaboration between the person giving the coaching and the person receiving it, whether that's managers or peers or even people in your personal relationship. And then one of the best benefits of coaching, in my view, is that employees stay when they feel like they're learning and growing. And coaching helps people feel like they're learning and growing. Feedback sometimes doesn't. So I'm into this a little bit, and I want to tell you a little bit about Peoplyst here before we move on. And I tell you about the framework. Is we do this for people every day. So if you're watching this webinar and you get to the end of it and you think, this is exactly the information that my managers need, or my managers could really benefit from this model, and you want us to come and deliver it for them, we're happy to do that for you. Peopleist does it every day. We can do it in person or virtual. Either way, we make one guarantee to you, which is your people problems will be solved. So let's get back to it. So the name of this coaching framework is the Shift Coaching Framework. And we like to use frameworks at Peopleist because it helps people remember uh, the way they can do things better. And this is very different than a lot of coaching that you'll see. This is not something where you have to have a formal certification or you have to spend a lot of time working with people. This Shift Coaching Framework, once you learn how to do it, can be done in the moment. It can be done in a 5-minute chat in a hallway. You could do it by the coffee pot. You could do it over a Zoom quickly. And it gives you the opportunity to coach in real time, right when a mistake happens and you want to do some coaching or, provide some coaching feedback. This is the great framework for doing it. Now, it does take a little bit of practice. And so what I'm going to do today is take you through each of the letters in this, which is an acronym. So I'm going to take you through each of the letters in this acronym, and at the end of that, I'll give you some examples of how to use this in a real world format. One for coaching an individual, and two for coaching a team. So what's the first letter in Shift is S. And so S stands for set the scene. So this is the beginning of the coaching experience. And you're going to start by grounding the conversation in what happened, when it happened. You want to make sure you give good context so that the employee or the person receiving the coaching knows exactly what you're talking about. And be sure to avoid generalizations. It's really important when you're doing this type of coaching to make sure that you are very specific in what you're saying. The next letter is H, and for H is highlight the why. So first you set context, and then after the context, you want to say, okay, this is why it matters. So now you're connecting it to a specific purpose because people need to understand why it matters beyond just today's task. And one of the real reasons people need to understand why is is because people are motivated by different things. So if you say, I really need you to do it this way, and you don't explain the why, they're going to spend way more time than they need to thinking about why you said that. So it's best just to give it to them right off the bat, explain it, connect it to a purpose. They don't have to think about it anymore. Next, I, and for I, you're going to invite insights. So you're asking questions now to draw out their perspective. Now, you gave them context, so they already know how you're thinking about it. And you already explained the why. And now that you explain the why, it might even change their insights. So here you're going to ask questions to draw out their perspectives. So it creates dialogue, and the dialogue creates buy-in that a monologue never can. So when you're giving feedback, it's usually one direction. When you're creating a dialogue by inviting insights, you're asking them to tell you what they think. Now, this is when you might get some things you consider to be an excuse, but what you really want to do is understand what they were thinking when the mistake happened, what learning they felt like they didn't have. Maybe it was support, because the next stage is going to start asking them for solutions. So you want to really hear them out. The next stage is the F, which is form options. So you set the context, you gave them the why, you asked for their insights, and now you're going to ask them, what are some possible paths forward? So, what are some things that you could do to help make this better? And you do this together so you can coach them through the options. And a lot of times you'll hear, I don't know, just tell me what to do next time. And you want to avoid that at all cost. You want them to form options with you. So you can ask questions and you can say, well, what about this? Or have you considered this other thing? And you can ask them questions to try to get their creative juices flowing so that they come up with the path forward under your guidance. Don't just give it to them. They need to work for it, because part of working for it is learning, and learning is growing. So don't prescribe, explore options together. And then once you have the options, the last letter is T, and this is translate into action. So basically, you're taking the options that they have, you're discussing what the best ones are. Sometimes there's more than one. Maybe there's two or three items that they could do different that they need to do, or maybe there's just one item. But whatever the items are that you decided on with them, you want to turn those into a commitment. So you're going to translate the conversation into a concrete next step. And during that translation, you're going to talk about how you will evaluate the new action. How will we know if it's working? How will you evaluate it? So that's it. It's not a complex thing. And when you're doing this shift framework, uh, you'll come to understand that it's a very natural process if you just do it this way every time. And pretty soon you'll go from thinking about the S and the H and the I. You won't even think about those things anymore. You'll just automatically start doing them in a conversation. And once it becomes that natural, then coaching takes your team's performance to a whole new level. You have to do it first. What you'll start to hear, though, is that your employees will start to use the shift framework on each other as well. And that's when performance really goes through the roof. So let's see it all in one place. Very simple. The shift framework: set the scene, highlight the why, invite insights from the employee, form options with the employee, and then translate that into action. And you say, okay, Bryan, that's great. Thanks for sharing this with me. I'm good. I'm going to go do it now. But maybe some other of you would like to see some examples. So I've prepared two for you, and I'm going to go through it as if I was the person doing the coaching. Of course, you won't hear the other side of the dialogue, but you'll be able to assume it from the examples. So let's start with this one. So we're going to set the context. Hey, the project update was due on Friday, but I received it Monday morning. This matters because late updates delay decisions and put extra pressure on the rest of the team. I'm curious what challenges came up that caused the delay. And then you would listen for the answer. Then you say, okay, that's good. What are some ways to ensure that the updates are on time in the future? And then you would walk through coaching. What are those ways? What are the best ways? And then once you arrive at one, you'll say, okay, that's great. So from this point forward, you're going to block out 2 hours every Thursday to finish your update. So let's see how that goes. So now what did I do? I gave them feedback, right? I said your project update was due on Friday, but I didn't receive it till Monday. And then I could have just ended where most managers do by saying, you need to do better, or you need to make sure you're on time. But that doesn't really help anybody. So here, following the shift framework, I give them everything they need to be successful. They feel like it was collaborative, and they feel like now they can grow forward, which is exactly what we want them to do. Now, you still have to inspect what you expect. So the let's see how that goes is something you want to pay attention to. And maybe you need to do shift again to make adjustments to it. So here's another example. In this morning's team huddle, I noticed only a few people spoke up. Look, this really matters because team input, it helps us catch issues early and build stronger solutions. I'm curious, how do you think the huddle went? And then you would listen for their answers. And then you would say, that's good. Thank you for sharing. How do you think we can encourage more voices in huddles? And then you're going to get some answers and you're going to talk through them. You're going to talk about which ones seem like the best. And then you would move on to the translate to action. So in future huddles, you're going to ask two open-ended questions to get everybody involved. That sounds like a great idea. Let's see how that works out. And then again, you're going to inspect what you expect. And so if that works, great. If it doesn't work, then you're going to iterate on it again by doing another shift. One thing we know here at Peoplyst for sure is that learning only counts when behavior changes. And so today I showed you the shift model, and it'll be real easy to hang up from this webinar and go about your day being busy. I encourage you to not do that, because if you don't change what you're doing, then you didn't learn anything today. And that would be a real shame for both of us. I hope that you do. And I hope the shift model is good for you. And so I have a challenge for you. In your very next one-on-one or very next conversation, I mean, even today, even an hour after you hang up from this webinar, try shift. Notice how it feels. Notice how they respond to you when you use it, and how much lighter it feels compared to giving feedback. I know a lot of times when I have to give feedback, it makes me nervous. It gives me a little bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, and you don't need to feel that way. If you're doing something good for people instead of what feels like assaulting them with feedback, then you can feel good about this kind of coaching, and they can feel good about receiving it. So I challenge you to try it on your very next try. And I mentioned before that coaching with the shift framework is part of our Foundations of Management program that we offer to companies of all sizes, from startups to Fortune 50 companies. And we can deliver this at your business as well. All you have to do is let us know. We'll be happy to do it for you. And again, my name is Bryan Howard. I'm at brian.howard@peopleist.com. If you would like a job aid for this webinar today, a quick reference guide that shows you the shift model, feel free to give me an email. You can email me with the subject line shift, and I will send that over to you. Appreciate you joining us today. I hope you have a good one, and we'll see you on the next webinar.